Hello, everyone. This is Dan Milner with ASCP, and thank you again for joining us for this week's session on the Quality Management Systems course on organization. We have Mary Jo Boniface, who spoke with us last week, who's going to be doing this presentation today. As always, if you have questions during the presentation or during the case discussion, please use the Q&A box on the bottom right of your screen for questions about the presentation, or if you want to respond or make comments about the presentation. If you're having technical problems, please use the chat at the bottom left of your screen, and we will try to help you with any technical issues that you're having. This is being recorded and will be available on the landing page about 24 hours after we start. And once it's available on the landing page, you should not need a code to see that, and you should have access to it. There are no polling questions today, but Mary Jo may ask you to give comments, etc., in the Q&A, so please do that. And then Ken and I will be in the background monitoring the Q&A and the questions. So with that, I will turn it over to Mary Jo.
Thanks, Dan. As just by way of simple introduction, for those of you that might not have been on last Thursday, I retired after a 40-year career as a medical laboratory scientist, and the last 30 of my career was as a laboratory director. And since my retirement, I have tried to stay very active in the clinical lab field, both nationally and internationally. I had served in the past as a volunteer with ASCP Global Outreach, providing the SLPTA and SLAMTA training both in Kyrgyzstan and in Tanzania. I'm also very active as a volunteer with Heart to Heart International, that many of you are familiar with, in their national and international efforts to improve lab operations around the globe. And I guess this shows that you can take the girl out of the lab, but it's hard to take the lab out of the girl. Okay, I'm very happy to be with you this morning doing this presentation for ASCP and your quality management system training. Jambo and karibu, hello and welcome. I know my Swahili isn't very good. I haven't used it for about 7 years, but I just wanted to say that to all of you. In 2014, I did training with ASCP in Dodoma, Tanzania. And here's a picture from the training group and from one of the sessions that we did. So if you are in this picture, I would certainly like to have you contact me and let me know what you're doing and where you are in your quality management system journey. Okay, today's learning objectives are: you will be able to describe organizational elements needed for a quality management system. You will be able to discuss management roles and responsibilities in the quality system. You will be able to explain the process for designing, implementing, maintaining, and improving the lab quality management system. And you will be able to explain the purpose of a quality manual. The term organization in the context of a quality management model is used to indicate the management and the supporting organizational structure of the laboratory. Now, organization is only one of the 12 essential elements of the quality system, but it is also intimately related to all the other elements in the model. You have already completed 10 of the 12 quality management essentials. And what you have left is today's session on organization and Thursday's documents and records. So let's next talk about the characteristics essential to the success of your quality management system. The principal element for a successful quality management system is managerial commitment. And this can't be stressed enough. Management and management at all levels must not only fully support, but actively participate in the quality systems activities. This support should be very visible to your staff so that there is an understanding of the importance of the management commitment. Without the engagement of management, including at the decision-making levels, all levels of the organization, it will not be possible to put the policies in place nor have the resources needed to support the quality management system. A second vital element is that the organizational structure must be designed to assure that the quality goals of the organization are met. First of all, the laboratory has to be a legally structured entity according to local requirements, whether that's the ISO 15189, CAP, CLIA, WHO, whatever entity you're working with. And all the organizational elements required to assure a properly functioning quality management system must be in place. All 12 of those quality management essentials. The important organizational requirements for achieving a successful quality system include the following: the leadership, managerial roles, organizational structure, the planning process, implementation, and finally monitoring and maintenance, so you have a continually improving process. Now we're going to go into each one of these requirements in more detail. Leadership. If you were part of the presentation last Thursday on leadership that Paul Labby and I did, this is really going to come into focus here. Leadership can be defined in many ways, but it is an important factor in the success of any organization's effort for improvement. A good leader will exercise responsible authority and provide a vision, give clear direction for goal setting and achieving. A good leader will motivate their staff and also provide encouragement along the way. A strong and effective leader will help staff understand the importance of the task at hand. If you remember, one of the definitions of a leader we talked about was a leader is a person who has a vision, develops a plan, and takes others along. Let's talk about management responsibilities. Laboratory management, according to ISO 15189, shall have responsibility for the design, implementation, maintenance, and improvement of the quality management system. That's from ISO 15189 4.1.5. A quality management system will outline specific responsibilities of the managers, and management is responsible for establishing policies and processes of the quality system, assuring that all policies, processes, and procedures and instructions are documented, and making sure that all personnel understand the documents, instructions, and what their duties and responsibilities are. And management is also responsible for providing their personnel with the appropriate authority and resources to carry out their duties. Management is also charged with providing a quality manual, which describes the quality management system. And this is the means by which all the policies are established and communicated to the staff. The primary management positions are most likely the laboratory director, who has the principal responsibility for setting up an organization that can support the quality system model, and they're responsible for developing the policies and assigning authority and assuring that there are resources available to develop and maintain the quality system. The quality manager has a very important job, and their primary job is to assist in the development of these policies and procedures and implementing the quality management system. Their primary responsibility is to implement these policies. But it's not just management. All lab staff are responsible for understanding the organizational structure, and they are also responsible for following all of the policies and procedures. Management commitment. I can't stress this enough, and it's management commitment at all levels, not just in the laboratory, but throughout the organization or the institution. Management needs to be involved at high levels, sufficiently high levels to assure the success of the program. Determine what that sufficiently high level is. I suggest that you get a commitment from, if you're working with the Ministry of Health, from the Ministry of Health, so that, you know, if you want to develop a quality management system, but they don't have buy-in, you're probably not going to be successful and you may not get the resources that you need. And the finance manager, when we talk about resources, we're talking about people resources, but we're also talking about financial resources. So get your finance manager, your chief financial officer, who's ever has ultimate control of the budget, to have buy-in and realize how important this is. And also lab staff. It's important that the commitment to quality is communicated to the entire laboratory staff. If the staff doesn't have buy-in into why this is important, then you're probably not going to be successful. Okay, the next one we're going to talk about is the organizational structure. And how you design this is important to the success of your quality management system. You must establish a structure that ensures sufficiency at all parts of the laboratory workflow. And we're going to talk a little bit about workflow in a little bit. Designate responsibilities and roles and develop an organizational chart and make clear who those reporting responsibilities are. And you have to designate a quality manager and make sure that you allocate sufficient resources, both financial and human resources. And that is what will determine how successful your process is. When you consider an organizational structure to support your quality management system, a number of elements should be considered. Hopefully you're all aware of what we call the path of workflow, and that's the route of a sample through the laboratory from the point at which a physician or provider orders the test, to the sample collection, to analyzing the sample, to the reporting of the result. And the organizational structure of the laboratory must support an optimal path of workflow by designing processes that ensure sufficient sample handling and at the same time minimizing errors as the sample goes through the process. So you need to spend considerable time on the designing of this system. And just by way of review, the first part of this is called the pre-examination or pre-analytical phase. That includes things such as things like your test requisition, does it meet all the compliance regulations for what needs to be on that requisition? Is it clear? Do your physicians know how to use it? Have they been trained how to use it properly? Ordering the test in the system, whether it's manual or through your computer system. Sample collection, SOPs for phlebotomy, SOPs for order entry, and sample transport, everything that happens to that sample before it gets to the actual testing phase. And most of the errors, the majority of the errors in an erroneous result leaving the laboratory happen in this pre-analytical phase. Very few are during the actual analysis. The second phase is the actual running the test. This is where your SOPs for how to do a test come into play. And then the report creation and getting the right result to the right person at the right time. All of that is post-analytical. And throughout all of this, data management and safety issues and customer service SOPs, that all comes into play here. I suggest that you look at your policies and procedures and categorize them into one of these three areas. It will help you when you're looking at policies and procedures and developing your quality manual, if you can assign each one of the processes and procedures and policies to one of these areas. And then, as I said before, realize that data management, safety, and customer service kind of impact all of these. An accurate and complete organizational chart is necessary. And many problems can be averted if there is clearly defined responsibilities and who reports to who and what the chain of command is. A quality management system has to have a quality manager, and it's important that that person have a high level of authority. So you see they're very high up in the organizational chart. ISO 15189 states that the laboratory must have a quality manager. And this quality manager is the person most directly responsible for assuring that the quality policies and procedures are carried out. The quality manager should sit very high in the organizational chart and must be delegated the appropriate authority and responsibility. The quality manager should report directly to the decision makers in the organization, typically the lab manager, lab director. Now, a really large laboratory may even have several quality managers, maybe several based on departments or division of duties, what each quality manager will be responsible for. On the other hand, in a very small laboratory, this could be a part-time job for maybe a senior tech or a supervisor, or in a really small lab, it might be the laboratory manager who's even designated as the quality manager. Quality manager responsibilities. The quality manager might be assigned many tasks, and some of those might include monitoring all aspects of the quality system, ensuring that staff follow the policies and procedures set forward, review the records. That's going to be a big job of the quality manager to review documentation, whether it's QC or EQA, that are all part of the quality system. The quality manager is usually the one that organizes internal audits to see how things are going, and also to coordinate any external audits that you might participate in. They're also going to look at investigating any deficiencies identified in the audit process, what we call opportunities for improvement. And they're also responsible for keeping management informed on all aspects of the quality system monitoring. What's happening in the lab? Are you, the things that you're measuring, are you improving? Are you going backwards? The quality management system is an ever-evolving system. It's very static. So one of the jobs is going to be making sure that management is aware of what's happening in the laboratory by way of quality. I got fat fingers here this morning. Okay. Once management is committed to instituting a quality management system in the lab, then a very well-defined planning process is needed. And how you approach this is going to vary on many factors in your local institution, such as what quality practices are already in place and in use in the lab and working well, and what's the current level of knowledge of your staff. Do you need to do more training with your staff? Are they involved in quality systems now, or is the quality systems venture something new that everybody's going to need some training and education in? Also, what resources are available money-wise? Is there a budget? How much money is there going to be to devote to developing the quality system? This is where you might want to get some buy-in from the CFO, that top level commitment, so that they realize how important it is to have money, the financial resources for quality, and also resources as far as people. Do you have adequate staff? Is your staff already overburdened? And who's going to have the time to work on developing a quality management system if they're already overburdened and understaffed? All of these elements need to be included in your planning process. And also realize it's not necessary, and it's also not possible to implement all parts of the plan at once. So you're going to have to implement the quality system in a stepwise process. Keep in mind, in many laboratories, the implementation may involve many changes. And a lot of people don't relate to change very well. So it's important that you keep all staff involved, and also don't proceed too rapidly. Personnel might find it difficult to meet the goals, and they can get discouraged. And this is where, we talked Thursday about one of the required skills of a good manager is being a good communicator. So communicate with your staff frequently, clearly, and in a positive way. And this will help keep the process moving and keep morale high. And during planning, some priority areas are going to emerge as a bigger problem as issues are identified. And it's important to keep your objectives realistic and measurable. Remember, SMART goals, set SMART goals: specific, measurable, achievable, relevant, and with a timeline. Recognize the larger issues and move on to other factors that can be addressed. If factors are vital to the ultimate success, then look for ways that you can influence or control them. Always be an advocate for quality, and don't get bogged down. If this is going to be a very daunting task, don't get bogged down. Remember, it's not going to happen overnight, and you'll get it done. It just may take a little longer, but the end product you'll be very pleased and happy with. In planning to implement a quality system, the first step is to analyze and understand what your current practices are. And a useful way to accomplish this is a technique called gap analysis. Which you can use a good quality system checklist and look at the practices in your laboratory that are already in place. If a policy or practice needs to be there, recognize that there's a gap, that you need something here. Look at areas where you're doing well. Look at areas that have gaps and what those gaps are. And the information that you get from the gap analysis is going to help you develop a list of tasks that need to be done and addressed. And once you have that list, then set your priorities. Consider problems that can be easily fixed first, so you have some successes. And then evaluate what would have the most impact on your lab quality, and give these factors a high priority. This is going to be your roadmap of where you need to go. And then as you work through your gap analysis, this is where you need to go. And then you can work on how you're going to get there, what you need policies and procedures for. Do they current ones need to be tweaked? But if you don't know where you are now, you're never going to know where you need to be. Problems that are commonly identified in a gap analysis include test ordering, sample management, incompetent or untrained technical staff, quality control, analytical processes, recording and reporting of results, documentation, and reagent and equipment management. This is where I suggest you go back and look at that path of workflow and list problems and what you found in your gap analysis, list them under one of the areas, whether it's pre-analytical, analytical, or post-analytical. And you may assign people to work on projects based on the path of workflow. You may have some people that are better at, working on the pre-analytical, some people with more expertise in the analytical. It's just a good way to look at the problem as a whole and assign where they fit in that path of workflow. The implementation of a quality system requires a written plan, and the plan has to make clear to all staff and users of the laboratory how the process is going to proceed. And this plan should contain the following components: objectives and tasks. What should be done? What needs to be done? Responsibilities. Who's going to get the job done? Whose responsibility is it? And important, a timeline. When will the task be worked on and when will it be completed? Also, what are the resources needed? Budget and human resource needs. Do you need additional staff, additional training? Is facilities a problem? Is equipment a problem? What about reagents and supplies? Things like that. All that goes into resources. And then benchmarks. It's essential for monitoring the progress in implementation. You don't know if you succeeded unless you can actually measure something. Did you get better? For example, if you see that you have a problem with your requisitions, not all the important information that is required is on the requisition. You need to design a new requisition. What needs to be fixed? Who's going to work on this project? And then when will it be done? How much time is it going to take? What kind of resources are needed? Is it people resources or do you need money? And then how are you going to know whether you succeeded or you improved? You can look at if you had a problem with, whether it was physicians ordering the wrong test because your requisition was not clear. Did physicians not complete all of the required information? Was it missing because there wasn't a place to put it on the requisition, or was it missing because the ordering physician didn't know how to use the requisition? There might be training involved there. So take a look at the project as a whole and see what needs to be done. What does it look like when the project is completed, and how can you measure how far you've come? Was there a problem ordering the right test when it got to the lab, when the sample got to the lab? Was that a requisition problem, or was that training of the people that were placing the order? Once your plan has been written and agreed upon, then and only then will implementation begin. So here are some suggestions that may help you in the process. What do you need? Commitment from the beginning to complete the project. And also go in with a positive attitude, a can-do approach. Maybe it's going to be a huge project, but if you approach it with a can-do attitude, it certainly will be better than having a negative attitude. And then prepare to implement in stages. It's important to prevent staff from getting discouraged. So choose manageable bites at the beginning. Staggering start dates will also be helpful. Don't try to implement the whole thing at once. And as we said before, establish some priority and determine those start dates. Pick an easy project first, just so there's some successes. And then again, determine those resources early in the process, and start getting those resources on board before you start working on the task. And then engage all the staff by communicating effectively. If training needs to happen, then make sure that training happens. And the training should be done before starting any of the other tasks. Training primarily, the first thing is to make sure your staff is on board about how important this quality management system development is and what it will mean to them and to the laboratory. This should be done before you even start. And then celebrate your achievements, no matter how small. Everybody likes a win, whether it's a big win or a small win. And then appreciate your staff. You're going to get what you give. If they feel appreciated, they're going to give back even more and help you on this journey to develop the quality management system. As part of the planning process, you'll have established a timeline for the task to be performed, and including what the projected completion date is. The timeline is really critical part of the process, and it allows everybody to see what the plan or what the roadmap is. If you're going to use this Gantt chart, I suggest you post it in the lab so it's visible for everybody to see. It lets them know what's happening, what the expected timeline is, and lets them see that you're making progress. And if you're using this as a working document at meetings, make sure it's updated and you talk about it at each meeting. Okay, this is what we've accomplished. This is what we're still working on, and this is where we're going. And whether you're meeting your timeline deadlines or not, and what needs to be done in order to do that. Resources. The timeline should be very carefully prepared so to allow time for completion, and don't let your staff become overwhelmed with the tasks that need to be accomplished. During this planning process, make sure that resources that are needed have been identified and even put into place. And again, it's the financial resources. Have you established a budget for your quality management system? And do you have the financial resources to work on the project and complete it? Personnel needs. Do you have enough staff? And also, will training be necessary? Also, do you have the equipment, supplies, computer needs in order to complete the project? Then you need to monitor your compliance. Establishing a system for monitoring quality management is essential in implementing any quality management system. And it's the monitoring and the maintenance part of the effort that's going to produce continuous quality improvement, which is the goal here. You don't want to plan for and implement a quality management system and then say, okay, we did it, we're done. It has to be continually monitored and improved. There's several steps in setting up the program to monitor compliance. First of all, assign responsibility. Whose responsibility is it to monitor this? It's probably going to be the quality manager, but that quality manager can also delegate some of that responsibility. Develop some benchmarks. using the laboratory quality policy, you can't change something if you can't measure it. So be real clear about what indicators are going to be used to know whether you've met your goal. And establish time or frequency of checks, decide how that monitoring is going to be managed. Are you going to look at these? Are you going to look at this a specific monitoring monthly, weekly, bi-weekly, every month, every quarter? That should be included in your planning process. Then conduct an audit followed by management review. That's internal audits are important as important tools in monitoring compliance. And an internal audit, you don't have to do an internal audit of the entire lab. I suggest maybe a timeline so that during the month of January, we're going to look at this particular part of the quality management system. Or if it's by department, in your department, what are you going to do monthly to audit the quality management system? Is it by department? Is it by supervisor? That can also be part of your planning process. Let's talk a little bit about internal audits. This picture is actually from the 2014 Dodoma training. These are the participants in the training that were actually conducting an audit of one of the laboratories that we visited. So they were trained on how to do an audit, and now they're putting that training into practice. Okay, now let's talk about the all-important quality manual. The quality manual, it's a document which fully and completely describes your quality management system. And it's the key to the process. It's a guide for the entire system. And it lays out all of your quality policies and describes the structure of all the other laboratory documents. In a laboratory that's implementing a quality management system, there has to be a quality manual. But there's considerable flexibility in how you're going to prepare it, and you can construct the manual so that it's most useful and suited to what your needs are. This is going to be covered somewhat in the next session, the documents and records. So yeah, you'll get more information on this on Thursday. The ISO 15189 requires that the laboratories have a quality manual, although the style and the structure are not specified. So you have some leeway. In writing a quality manual, the purpose is to clearly communicate information and to serve as that framework or a roadmap for meeting the quality system requirements. It's the responsibility of lab management and thus conveys management's commitment to quality and to the quality management system. What should be included in the quality manual? All policies and procedures. This should address all 12 elements of the quality system. All references to processes and procedures. Now, your standard operating procedures, or how you do a particular procedure, you'll probably have so many of them. You're not going to include each one in the quality manual. That will be in your SOP manual, but the referral to the SOPs should be in your quality manual. Table of contents. ISO 15189 does provide a suggested table of contents. This includes a description of the laboratory, staff education, training policies, and other elements of a quality management system. And again, this is going to be included in the document and records presentation. Maintaining and using the quality manual. As we said, the quality manual is a framework for the entire quality management system, and therefore it has to always be correct and up to date. So you're going to need to establish a process to assure that the manual is always being reviewed and maintained and improved. When the manual is written and prepared, it has to be approved by the head of the laboratory. And in some labs, approval by another appropriate person, such as the quality manager, will be required also. Official signatures and dates need to be on the manual itself, on all of the policies. Remember, this is a static document. It's continually being reviewed and updated. So don't create a quality manual and put it on the shelf. Make sure it's visible and available to all staff. When you have an external audit, one of the first things the auditor is going to ask for is, let me see your quality manual. And they're probably not going to ask that of the quality manager. They're probably going to ask it of a staff member when they're walking around the laboratory. The process for updating the manual needs to be established. For example, how often are your procedures reviewed? Is it annually? Is it biannually? How are your revisions tracked? And how do you document that your staff has read the procedure or the policy? And what's their competency like? Instructions on how to use the manual should be provided to all staff. And like I said, don't develop this wonderful quality manual and then put it on the shelf so it looks pretty but is not functional. Successful implementation of a quality management system requires the following. This is kind of a review. First of all, you have to have management commitment. Understand the benefits of a quality management system, management and staff, and also include upper management. Engage staff at all levels. And there must be continual monitoring and improvement of the quality manual and the quality system. Also, have some realistic expectations. This isn't going to happen overnight. Be patient, but be persistent. You've made the decision to have management support to develop a quality management system. The final step in developing a quality management system is to move from intent to action. This is where the rubber meets the road. As the laboratory moves from intent to action in the development of your quality management system, the major organizational steps will need to be, first of all, assign responsibility for implementation. Make sure you've assigned this responsibility and that person or people know what their responsibility is. Again, allocate the resources. Develop and distribute the quality manual. Make sure everybody knows what it is and where it is and how to use it and how to refer to it. Begin implementation and then monitor compliance with the quality policy and the quality management system requirements. And also one important step here, don't forget training. If training is required for anyone in the entire chain to know and understand what the quality system is and how to not only use the manual, but make sure if there's training on how to do something, if there's an SOP change or if there's a new policy, make sure there's training on it. In summary, successful implementation of a quality management system requires, number one, planning. management commitment at all levels, and understanding of the benefits of the quality management system. Then engage staff at all levels. Set SMART goals. Remember, we talked a little bit about what SMART goals are: specific, measurable, achievable, realistic, and with a timeline. And then finally, look for ways to continually improve. Remember, this job is never complete. It's not like, here's a project and isn't it great? We completed this project and now we're done. No, this quality improvement is a never-ending job, and you're never going to be at your final destination, because quality is ever evolving and ever changing. And so just remember that you need to work on this every day. Here's the key message and takeaway from today. Quality is not a science, it's a way of thinking, and not only thinking, but a way of behaving. Spend time today in order to gain rewards tomorrow. The time you invest today is going to help you gain quality results, both professionally and personally, with a lot of satisfaction and peer recognition. There's great pride in not only saying that you have a quality laboratory, but being able to document and to show that your policies, your procedures, and everything you do in the laboratory is of a high quality. Who's responsible for quality? Is it management? No, it's everybody. It's the lab leaders and the managers. They must commit to meeting the quality needs of the laboratory, but it's laboratory personnel who follow all of the quality assurance procedures and adhere to the requirements and standards that guarantee that you have a quality laboratory. And remember, it's a team effort. It's not just one person, it's everybody on the team that is responsible for quality. Okay, I did all the talking. Now, do you have any questions or any comments?
Hey, Mary Jo, we have one question so far. It's how frequently should quality manuals be reviewed and updated?
Well, that's something that you'll decide in the planning process. Now, if there's specific regulations that say all of your procedures, like your SOPs, need to be reviewed and updated annually and signed off, then you'll have to follow that. If there is no actual regulation, then I would say set something that's realistic for you. All procedures need to be reviewed at least every 2 years, signed off by the well, in my case, the laboratory, it had to be signed off by the medical director, which was our pathologist. So I would check and see whether there's any specific regulations for whoever audits your lab. If there's some specific regulations, or what the WHO standards are specifically that say, all procedures have to be reviewed and signed off annually. So I would check first to see if there's any regulation. Otherwise, don't make it too long. But just that's something you can set forth in your quality manual: how often procedures have to be reviewed, how often policies have to be reviewed and signed off, and that also includes making sure that your staff have read and reviewed and signed off on the new policy or procedure.
Okay, thanks, Mary Jo. So we have a couple more questions. Let's see. One is it okay to have the quality manual only in soft copy, or should you have a, what's good practices in terms of backup and storage?
Um, Only a soft copy. Well, if you've got the resources, the computer resources to um, have documents online, um, that's fine. But I would also have a hard copy. And if it's easier for your staff to be able to access the quality manual by hard copy, then that might be better. Now, what my organization had, we had a hard copy of the quality manual at, it was a joint venture multi facility laboratory. We had 4 different sites, so there was a hard copy at each one of the laboratories, but everything was also available online. All SOPs, all policies, procedures could be accessed at the bench via the LIS. And so, if you wanted to know, was there a change in the policy or what the most current policy was, you could just access it online. But if that's not possible, then you can have a hard copy also. So I guess, is it okay to have a soft copy only? Well, yes, but you better have a backup in case, and
Yeah.
uh,
That
and
make-
whether that's a backup soft copy on a drive, or on a separate drive, or something like that. I guess it depends on what your situation is.
In terms of managing versions, having a electronic version makes it easier to maintain kind of your your uh, current version in one established place.
Yes.
So we have another question about the quality manual, and it is, so does the quality manual contain all SOPs? Or might you have some documents that are not considered part of the quality manual?
I would say the SOPs for the SOPs, by way of, like, okay, the the SOPs as far as procedures for actually how to do a test, that can be in the procedure manual and can be referenced in the quality manual. The quality manual will be more things like, um, you know, your QC policy, your um, oh, let me see, what's a good example? But it's more policies rather than actual technical procedures.
Thanks. So we have two similar questions here asking about kind of the background and qualifications for a quality manager. One is, are there specific qualifications required according to ISO 15089? And the other is more general, what qualities would you look for in a quality manager?
This is one of those positions where I would pick the quality manager based on talent rather than on like length of time they've been at the laboratory, what their experience is. Have they has the person you're looking at to be the quality manager, do they have expertise in quality, or you know is the whole quality thing new to them? Do they have the potential to develop what's needed? um, do they have the quality manager is going to have authority to tell people what they have to do, and also what they're doing wrong and how they have to improve? So I would say they need some good interpersonal skills to be able to effectively uh, translate their authority. They need to be a good communicator.
Mhm.
And the quality manager doesn't necessarily need technical expertise in all areas of the laboratory. Maybe they're currently a chemistry supervisor. Well, they've got some good background in quality and quality control, but that can also translate to the quality policies in blood bank or micro or other areas. So
Now we have a couple questions about the laboratory organizational structure and organograms. I think one is kind of based on, it's from someone in a laboratory where the roles are not clearly defined, and they're asking how can you influence management to establish a proper organogram? And another participant is asking about how the organogram in a lab compares to the general hospital management structure.
well, um, okay, so for the first question, is there an organizational chart, but the roles aren't clearly defined as far as who reports to who, or?
I'm not sure if it's general roles or if they're specifically speaking to the quality manager, but it looks like it's more general. Lab management structure is maybe the positions aren't defined, or the job descriptions aren't clear, or reporting structures aren't clear.
Oh,
Um,
okay. Well, I know when I was doing or involved in job descriptions, it clearly said in the job description who that person reported to. And when you got into management, it was okay. We had the directors at the top. We had an administrative director and the technical director, and supervisors reported directly to the technical director. Where um, um, when I was the lab manager, I reported to the administrative director. Um, and those lines were clearly defined as far as in your job description who you reported to, and on the org chart who you reported to. So I guess is it a question where the org chart isn't clear or the role isn't defined, and maybe if it's not defined in job descriptions, uh, add that to your job descriptions who you report to, and then make clear the people who you're reporting to know who's reporting to them. And, as we talked about in the presentation, it's if you're going to do an org chart, it has to be very clear what those reporting lines are and what the authority is. And then as far as a quality manager, that position has a lot of authority along with a lot of responsibility. So the quality manager should report to somebody very high up in the organization, like the lab director. If the lab director is also the quality manager, then um, then the quality manager is part of the director's job, and that person reports to the another layer of management. And that's why it's so important that you have buy-in from the top levels of the organization or the institution, so that everybody knows how important quality is.
Actually, we just got a follow-up comment, and it's saying that there's a general structure within for hospital management, but within each individual unit, like the labs, there's no job descriptions or anything. And so I think a question would be, for this participant, how do they approach management or their directors to try to start creating some of that structure, or start to change that?
So okay, so in the laboratory director knows who they report to, but the people in the lab don't. There's no clear lines.
That's what it sounds like. Maybe
Okay,
there's a lot of
you
people
know that
covering different positions, and
yeah, I think that would be a conversation with the lab manager. Can we have some clearly defined um, know who reports to who, or what the reporting line is, and maybe they don't have it because the laboratory manager doesn't want it or isn't able to. I mean, I guess, and would the laboratory manager be open to um, developing some of this? Now, the laboratory manager reports to somebody higher than them, so uh, maybe it starts at the lower lab level to the manager, and then the manager to whoever that person reports to say this is something we need. This is a I don't like to use the word deficiency. This is an opportunity for improvement. This is an area where we've seen some issues and we need to fix this. And um, can we work on this?
All right, thanks. Um, so we have another question about the quality manual, and it's should the quality policy also be included?
The quality policy. Oh, you mean the like the ISO policy that says you have to have the quality manual? Or I guess what is the quality policy?
I generally think of quality policies more at a national level than at the laboratory level, but perhaps the laboratory could have quality standards laid out in a policy.
Yeah, I guess I'm not clear what a quality policy, your quality policy, you've got a lot of policies that are help you have fit into this quality management system. So as far as one overall quality policy, um, I think maybe just a statement at the beginning of your quality policy, or your quality, an overall statement in the quality at the beginning of the quality, kind of an introduction in the quality manual about commitment to overall quality and developing policies and procedures that guarantee the quality and the continuous quality improvement of the laboratory. Maybe just some kind of general statement like that.
Right. And if this is referring to like a national quality policy, you can probably cover that by reference and not
Right.
include the entire thing in your manual.
Yeah, if you're following ISO 15189, or even and that's what WHO uses, you can reference the actual um, policy.
Right. And then can multiple labs within the same hospital share a quality manual, even if they are different specialties? Your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I think they could. I mean, if they're different laboratories within the same institution, I would think I think it might even be a good idea. I mean, is there some sharing of over? I mean, is it totally separate, or if it's I would say if there's some similarities, like if it's a different specialty, if you have like, maybe a molecular lab, or if you have, a separate lab that's doing only micro, and then you have, a lab dedicated to chemistry or whatever, I think it would be beneficial to have a joint quality manual, because you're going to have some of the same policies that overlap, and it might even be good um, to get some like cross pollination of the laboratories, and having the laboratories maybe even work together.
Right. So as long as they're coordinated and the document management can be handled between the different
Mhm.
laboratories, there are definite benefits, right?
I mean, if there's some procedure that is specific to one particular laboratory, um, that can be in the general quality manual, and just say, it's specific to, you know, that particular lab. But I think it might be good, because there's obviously going to be some some procedures that are going to be universal. And you might not want two laboratories in the same institution operating under different policies. It might be a good way to standardize things.
Yeah, we have a comment from the University Teaching Hospital in Zambia, just sharing their experience. They have one quality manual for 16 units from different specialties, but the technical SOPs are specific. There's one quality officer in charge and coordinates the whole system. So that sounds like a great approach. So regarding the quality policy, the attendee followed up with the quality policy prepares for high level, like national or regional level. However, the quality policy prepares for the sake of managing the lab. Actually, I think this is referring to more of like a national level or higher level laboratory quality policy. All right, well, I think that we can probably wrap up the Q&A session for now and come back after the scenario. Oh, I'm sorry, he clarified. The quality manual is for the managing the lab. The quality policy is for the national or regional level. So yeah, that's what we were.
Oh, okay, okay, all right.
Okay, thanks for the clarification, Georges. So yeah, if you'd like to go to the.
Okay, well, this was my ending for this. I so enjoyed working with all of you. One of my goals, it's on my bucket list, is to get back to Africa someday and maybe meet some of you in person. It's been a real pleasure working with ASCP on this project, and I want to wish you the best of luck to all of you in your labs and your total quality management journeys. So thank you very much. And if you'd like to contact me, this is my email, and feel free to contact me and let me know how things are going if you've got any other questions. And like I said in the beginning, if any of you were part of that group in Tanzania back in 2014, please let me know. I miss you all and really wish I could keep up with how you are improving your laboratories. Okay, on to the case study. I wasn't sure what kind of a case study to do that fit with organization. So when I worked with Heart to Heart on some projects for laboratory training in, I don't know if this was a project for Africa or India, but they wanted us to do some work on laboratory ethics and give some scenarios. So I thought maybe this would be a good one for us to do today. Just talking a little bit about lab ethics and a couple scenarios. The strength of laboratorians are, we're used to following standard procedures. We have great attention to detail. We understand the science of the testing, and we understand the potential consequences to the patient if we don't follow protocols. But the potential weakness of laboratorians are, we're not trained as psychologists. We see the world as right or wrong, and we tend to be direct and not always diplomatic, or we tend to be introverts and don't handle situations and conflict well. So the first case we're going to talk about is the demanding physician. I'm sure none of you have ever encountered a demanding physician, but let's say you do. We've worked with demanding physicians, but what do you do when the doctor wants you to run a test improperly? Here's the situation. The surgeon came to the lab directly from the surgical suite with synovial fluid in a tube. He had just finished surgery and was concerned that the knee was actually infected and he should not have performed the surgery. He asked the tech to run a white blood cell count on the synovial fluid using the hematology instrument. The problem: the instrument is not certified to process synovial fluid. The clinical lab scientist explained about the instrument certification, told the physician that they couldn't run the sample through this machine and they would be happy to send the specimen to the main lab where it could be processed properly. The doctor continued to demand that the CLS run the test. The lab manager was called in. He repeated the explanation to the physician, and there was a loud, prolonged discussion. Okay. What happened was the manager finally refused to run the test, and the physician stormed out of the lab. And then with repeated requests, the physician finally wrote an order for the test, and the specimen was sent to the main lab, and the results were received within a few hours. Okay, let's talk about this. The physician is concerned about the patient, and he wanted his results immediately, didn't understand that running the synovial fluid would have given an inaccurate or invalid result. He was worried, he was demanding, but the CLS was correct to deny the request. Offering an alternative way to test was the right response to the request. Has anybody been in a situation like this, and what can you add to this? What are some of the ways, either by example, that you've had to deal with something like this, and how was it resolved? And let's just have some discussion about this.
Yeah, please feel free to use the chat window or the Q&A box to share any thoughts or experiences you have.
We getting anything, Dan?
This is Ken. Nothing yet.
Okay. I think the important thing here, as far as ethics is concerned, is you know what's right here, and as the CLS, you have an obligation to make sure the right result is reported on the patient, because the patient comes first. And while it may be difficult, and this encounter is not pleasant, especially if the physician is screaming and yelling at you, but as far as ethics, you have an obligation not to compromise your position, and not to back down, not to compromise, not to run the sample and give an erroneous result, because in the end it's the patient who's going to suffer. The other thing here was the other important thing was, in this case, the manager had the CLS's back. They stood up to the physician as well, and had the tech's back and supported them, which sometimes does not always happen either.
Right. So one participant has shared that that they have seen or experienced this, where doctors have actually threatened to take away business from the lab if they don't kind of have their way. And the labs kind of have to agree just to keep the samples coming in. One participant asked, what if there isn't an alternative? There isn't a reference lab that offers that test. Could the sample be run after explaining that to the physician with like a disclaimer?
Well, you know, if you run the sample and report it out with the disclaimer that um, you know, results cannot be I don't know how to say this. Results cannot be certified as accurate um, or
Yeah, or test has not been validated on this specimen type.
yes.
Um,
But that
but
does that how's that going to translate in the medical record?
yeah,
Um,
it's
you
not a
know,
great.
and what's the physician going to do? He's concerned he shouldn't have done the surgery because there might have been an infection. Um, is there an alternate test you could do, but besides running it, you know, can the lab do a manual CSF? Of course, I guess it's not going to, it depends on what he brought it in. Is it no longer sterile? Um, um, yeah, and then you could do that, but then you're going to have an issue how that gets translated in the patient's medical record.
Right.
Um,
So we've had
if anything comes of this, let's say the patient did have an infection, they can't use this test as documentation that he did or didn't because it's invalid.
right.
And maybe that's how you put it on a disclaimer. This test result are invalid.
Right. So we have a few more actually several more submissions here. So I'll read through a few. So in one case, a physician insisted that the lab rerun a bilirubin tests 5 times, getting the same result each time, and then sent it out to another lab only to have the same result or a similar result come back. But they had to redo the test several times, even though it was unnecessary.
Mhm.
And one person suggested that the strength of the lab manager can solve many of these conflicts. So, pointing out that the lab management has a key role to play here
Right.
between the
Uh,
techs and
and,
the customers.
and sometimes, you know, even getting the lab manager involved doesn't work. If you can get a pathologist, if you've got a pathologist, you can get involved because a lot of physicians um, will, when they're communicating peer to peer, they seem to back down easily.
Mm-hmm. Let's see. So we have one that's inexperienced, but also a question. So last week, a physician brought one hormone test for the lab to run, but this person told the physician that uh, they were at a loss because they would have to do calibration, which would consume reagents for 4 tests and QC reagents for 3. So the laboratorian insisted that they pool the samples for testing later. The test was for IVF. So they're not sure if they did the right thing. I think they found out the purpose of the test later.
Oh, okay. I was going to say, if you knew right up front that this was for IVF, yeah, it was going to be more costly for the lab, but um, here's a case where personally I would have run it, or I would have told, as a lab manager, I would have authorized running it.
Okay, we have another one here where a clinician wanted a lab to run a clotted sample. And so they started having weekly clinical meetings to kind of reinforce, how a specimen rejection worked and what constituted an acceptable specimen. So that's a good practice.
Excellent, excellent, excellent. What I've found, by experience and in talking to others, particularly where lab is not responsible for the collection, where it's nurse collectible or collected in the ER, and you know, um, run it anyway. It's clotted. Well, run it anyway. Run it anyway. And um, particularly if it happens a lot, it just develops a very bad relationship between nursing and the laboratory. And my concern is always, okay, rather than bitching about this back in the corner of the lab, you need to seize the teachable moment and work with nursing, or work with ER, or work with wherever these are being collected, and just you know um, maybe even, okay, and maybe you run a sample, and you show them the difference between the results of a clotted or a non-clotted specimen, but that's going to probably gunk up your machine. But um, you know uh, nurses aren't trained in this. The other thing is, okay, order of draw, or mixing the sample. Are they not used to mixing the sample, and that's why it clotted, and how important that is. So I think education and working together is very key here.
Great. Well, that is it for the comments on this
Okay.
one.
Okay, well, let's go to the next case. This has to do with patient privacy. And we here in the US have very, very stringent privacy regulations. And so I'm not sure what your regulations are, if this would affect you the same way, but um, everybody in the medical field cares about patients. And we chose these careers primarily to help people, and help people that are hurting. But when does caring too much become a problem? A CLS in the hospital laboratory was a devoted Christian. She would read the medical records of patients to learn more about their conditions so she could pray for them. And she took it a step further and would go to the patient's room and pray for them with them. Patients were confused and some were angry and reported this to administration. So in this case, looking up patient information is wrong, even if you think you have a good reason for doing it. The rule is you only look up patient information that you need to perform your job. You don't look up information on family members, even if it's your own child, spouse, mother, father. If you want to pray for patients, you may. You don't need any specific details because God knows the details. Question is, what would you have done with this person?
All right, so please leave your thoughts in the chat or Q&A box. While we wait for that, we did have one last submission for the last case.
Okay.
With the clinician asking for archaic tests like urine light microscopy for red cell morphology. And they state that usually if you can offer an alternative, the physicians are amenable, and that they're more likely to listen to a pathologist.
Yes. Okay, we don't have any comments about this one yet?
Let's see, we just got one, and it's, they say, go through the code of ethics with the person and strongly advise them to never do it again.
Okay.
That's the only one so far.
Okay. Well, I'll tell you what happened in this case. As I said in the beginning, this person was fired for violating patient privacy. This is something that is stressed over and over and over again from, the first day of orientation. And in my laboratory, every year as part of the annual competency review and review procedures, they had to sign a confidentiality agreement where this was specifically laid out that you don't access patient records for anything unless it's needed to do your job. And this is never a case where it's 3 strikes and you're out. If you're found to violate the privacy policy, you are immediately terminated. Okay, here's another one. This has to do with patient privacy. This was actually a case that I submitted because it actually happened in my lab. An old classmate comes to the lab as a patient. The CLS looks up their phone number to reconnect with them, giving medical information to the patients. This is an example of patient privacy. Giving medical information to the patient's employer, looking up a lab result on a patient if you don't need it to do your job. And again, any violation of patient privacy was grounds for dismissal. The first example, it was really a phlebotomist, and she went up to draw the patient and discovered it was her old classmate, and there was a class reunion coming up, and so she badgered not the patient but the patient's family to get his phone number so that she could contact him. This did not result in her immediate dismissal. There was a meeting with her that this was inappropriate, and she didn't actually access his medical record. It was a complaint from the family that she asked for the information, but these are examples. What kind of examples do you have of violating patient privacy?
So one person has stated, people looking up results of patients and releasing to unauthorized relatives or employers. That happens with some frequency. Some clinical lab scientists counsel patients on the results of their tests, like a genotype result. So.
Okay, let's move on to the next case. Well, having trouble here. Falsifying documents. This is another place where ethics is going to come into play. Documentation is the lifeblood of laboratory scientists. Temperature charts assure us that the reagents were kept at the right temperature. Initial logbooks document who did the test and what the results were. And it's also imperative that documentation happens at the moment, not before or afterwards. So in some cases, not if what we always say is if you didn't write it down, if you didn't document it, it wasn't done. I'll give you an example of falsifying documents with regard to temperature logs. My first job as a clinical lab scientist, I'd never been involved in an inspection before, and the lab manager came to us and said, "Oh, we're having an inspection." That's when they announced inspections. "We're having an inspection next week." And, you know, this was the second place that I worked. It was totally different than the first place that I worked. And there were temperature logs posted, but nobody, you know, if you wrote on them, fine. If you didn't, whatever. So the week before the inspection, the lab manager sat the four of us techs down at a big table, gave us temperature logs, and they were passed around, and you put a date on it, and then you made up a temperature, and then, you know, you passed it to the next person who could write a few in a different color ink. I was so appalled. I just couldn't believe it. Of course, you know, low person on the totem pole. I didn't say anything to the pathologist, which, you know, in retrospect and years later, I probably would have, but I just couldn't believe we were actually forced by the lab manager to falsify these records. Now, it wasn't patient records, it was temperature charts. And I know he never would have made us falsify any documents that had to do with patient results, but this was just an example of what, you know, what I was asked to do, and totally unethical. Also had a case where I was involved in the termination of this employee. He was a phlebotomist on the third shift, and he was, you know, when not busy, there was microscope maintenance to be done, you know, cleaning of the microscope and things like that. And he was caught falsifying, you know, said he did the maintenance and he didn't. And he lost his job over it. Here's a scenario. A CLS was assigned to blood bank. In the middle of her shift, she was asked to move to another department to fill in for an absent employee. After she left blood bank, another CLS started a cross match. When he tried to enter the results in the log, he noticed that results were already recorded. The second blood bank employee asked the first about the results, and her reply was that she always filled out the paperwork first because 99% of the time it was normal. If there was a problem with the cross match, she would change the results. So, what would you do with this employee?
Yes, please type your answers in the chat window. Mary Jo, we did have one more submission regarding this case 2.
Oh, okay.
And this is this individual states that they've had cases where employers will come in with housekeepers and pay for them to have tests done, telling them that it's routine, but then providing their own email for the delivery of results. So that's obviously some ethical issues there, but how would you recommend they,
Okay, so an employer is bringing an employee in for test.
to have some tests done?
Is this testing that they have to do their job? Or is it being
Unclear.
nosy?
I think they're told that it's routine for their job, but it's not clear if it actually
Oh,
is or whether that's allowed or not.
hmm. Well, typically if, what I would suggest, if you're going to have employers bringing people in for testing as part of their job, then who's paying for the test? Is the employer paying for the test? And then there should be an account for this company. I don't know. And what I would be used to is employers would have either an employee health department, or they would have a physician on staff as their medical provider, and then results would go to the physician.
Right.
I think it's very questionable to have the results go to the employer with no guarantee that they're actually using it for their job, or that they're not going to share the information.
With the case of a housekeeper, it doesn't seem like there's a.
Okay, is this a facility that's got a housekeeping department, or is this employer's personal housekeeper?
I think this is an individual having their
Oh,
housekeeping.
oh, no, boy, no.
Yeah. That's a different circumstance.
That's a different circumstance. Yeah, I don't think I would even agree to do the test.
And certainly if the same email is being provided for multiple people, you can.
Yes, exactly.
That or, Okay, so for case 3, one of our participants has stated, this is misconduct and that they should be disciplined according to set procedures. And someone commented on the employer having their workforce tested. Someone has said, in this case, they'll ask the staff to sign a consent for release of the results to their employer.
Any more feedback on what you would do with this blood bank employee? Or even if you had a similar situation to this, I will tell you what happened in this case. The employment was terminated because when the paperwork was completed before doing the work.
I missed some answers in the Q&A window.
Oh, okay.
Yes, so someone says that call for the employee to basically state their case and review all the documents that they've been responsible for. Since they said they always did this, they would recommend refresher training. Another person has said to terminate them. And yeah.
We had a case like this that did involve blood bank. It wasn't filling in the logbook. The policy for phlebotomists to draw blood bank samples was the patient's ID number was on the requisition, but our policy said that the phlebotomist had to rewrite the patient's identification number directly from the armband onto the requisition and compare it to the medical record or the ID number that was on the requisition. It was just another check to make sure that you were drawing the right patient. This phlebotomist said, well, they always match. So I just wrote it down, not from the armband, but I just copied it onto the requisition. And luckily, the mistake was caught before the sample was even run. It got caught in the first accessioning step in the laboratory, and this was for a cross match, and it was indeed the wrong patient. This person was terminated.
So we've had a couple, I'm going back through the Q&A. There were a couple questions about disclosure of test results to spouses, specifically in the context of an HIV result where, not disclosing or not sharing the result with the spouse could, have a impact on them as well. Does that change anything to do with the patient's privacy protection?
For us here in the U.S., no.
Right.
There would be a significant impact on the spouse if the result wasn't shared, but no, absolutely not. Cannot share. Shouldn't have even looked up the results.
Right. But this is where it's really the role of the testing staff and the counselor to encourage the person testing positive to, be responsible and inform their contacts and all of that. But that's not the role of the lab staff.
No.
We also had a couple questions about the genetic testing and basically whose responsibility is it to share results and do genetic counseling. I'm guessing if you don't have a specific or an assigned genetic counselor, it seems like clinicians are often asking the laboratory staff to provide results to patients or to explain results.
Well, if I think is the lab staff competent enough to do that? I don't think it should come from the lab staff. I think here's a case where maybe the physician should consult with the pathologist or the lab director where the testing was done if they need an explanation. And a lot of times the physicians don't even know without consulting a genetic counselor or a genetic laboratory what tests they should even order. The problem we had was doctors were ordering these genetic tests and they were not even ordering the right test. But I don't think I don't believe that interpretation of the genetic testing results is in the wheelhouse of the lab personnel. I mean, if it's good, it could go from physician to physician from the laboratory.
All right. Well, I think that's. I think we've gotten through all of the Q&A and chat. One follow-up on the employers. So this was referring to housekeepers, and apparently since they're, working with children or working in the household, they have cases where these employers want to have their housekeepers tested, and
that would never fly here.
yeah, I think. What do you think about assigned consent form? I think this would have to be done within the context of your own local laws and
Yes, yes.
but-
And also within, you know, you might want to check with hospital legal.
right.
Okay, I think that's it. So these are just cases, some of them, you know, routine, some of them a little bizarre about what you need to be aware of and where you need to stand your ground and what's appropriate and what isn't appropriate.
Well, thank you so much, Mary Jo, for this presentation. This was really great. And thank you to all the attendees for your participation today. It was really great participation and feedback. So
Yeah, this is Dan. Again, thanks so much to Mary Jo and to Ken for going through the questions with you. I think this has been a really fruitful and interesting discussion. The cases are very challenging because they're very personal and deal with people's behavior and not necessarily their performance. So it's always an interesting discussion around organization and dealing with personnel, et cetera. So just a reminder, you will receive the invitation for the last session, which is going to be this Thursday, day after tomorrow, a little bit later on today. There is a case with that, and that will be presented by Emily Glenn. She'll be doing that presentation. So we look forward to seeing all of you there. And until then, please take care, and we'll see you soon.
Thank you all.